Just like everybody's got one season. That's just he said he was off there last week. You know, somebody from the party saying it's dysfunctional. The frustration is mounting.
Well, I better take the chairs back.
I'm Kevin Rafter, I'm the Vice President.
Sit here in the shade.
We're here today to talk about the Farm Bill, and I want to introduce Representative Berg, who was very kind to take some time to visit with you all about this. Congressman Berg brings more than 25 years of public service and private business experience to Washington, D.C., where he's the lone representative, for North Dakota to the U.S. Congress, and he serves on the very important and very powerful Ways and Means Committee. We all know that he was born and raised in North Dakota. He was a 4-H leader. He was involved in a number of different things, and more importantly, he received his Ag Economics degree from North Dakota State University. So go Bison. By the way, we have sellout crowds for the national championship football team. You know, his legislative work in North Dakota has been instrumental. We all know that he's a very, very strong supporter of agriculture, and we're very pleased to have him here today. So Representative Berg, thanks very much for coming.
Thank you, Ken. It's great to be on NDSU's campus, and you know, it's great to be here in the greenhouse. I mean, these are things that everyone here has worked a long time over the years to try and improve agriculture, and so it's fun. I don't know if you've heard, but I understand that NDSU's enrollment in college ag is up again this year. It's going to break a record this fall. You know, ag is the backbone of our economy here in North Dakota, and we all know that. So it's exciting to. And this is one of the things that's been, I think, fun for me out in D.C. is our ag industry has really been one of those shining job creators right now in the stalled economy. Everyone you talk to in Washington says jobs are a problem. We have to get our economy going. And in agriculture, that's where we're creating a lot of new wealth, a lot of new opportunities, and more revenue for states and the federal government from, you know, the income and the revenue taxes being paid. So, you know, having said that, I'm just really happy to have Kristi here. You know, we're both elected in 2010. Kristi has a strong ag background. She grew up on a farm. Her dad passed away really when she was in college, and she went back and got the farm going, kept the farm going. She typifies strong agricultural women that we have throughout North Dakota, and so that's been clear of the people of South Dakota, and she's been just a real partner and a strong advocate for agriculture in Washington. She serves on the Ag Committee, so part of the farm bill that was put together in the House that we're waiting to be acted on and going to conference committee, she was a key person in crafting that legislation. She also represents our freshman class on the leadership board, and so she has been just a strong advocate to get this bill on the floor, get it in the conference committee. She led a couple of things. One thing was we had 60 people in the House that signed a letter to leadership to get this farm bill on the floor and get it acted on. So 79, still growing. So it's really a pleasure for her to be here today and really talk really with you all. I look at agriculture as kind of my friends and family over the years. Every now and then we may have disagreements with friends and family, but it's great to have everyone here, and I'm really looking forward to doing this roundtable. So I guess with that, I'll just turn it over to Kristi. What I'd like to do is really two things. I see One is just for us to be here and explain the process and what's going on right now and what we think we need to do to move this decision forward to get a long-term farm bill. And then also to really, when this does go to conference committee, to get your input on from your commodity group, from your people that you're representing here, to share what's important when we get into that conference committee. So those would be the two things I'd like to do. So,
yeah.
That, Kristi?
Yeah, thank you. And it's good to be here. I appreciate it. I see some familiar faces in the room and some new ones. So it's really an honor for me to come and visit with you. I, like Rick said, grew up on a farm and ranch and have done that my entire life. What got me involved in agriculture and in government after growing up on a farm and ranch was, when the death of my father happened, was the death taxes in our family. People ask me all the time what got you interested in government, and that was really it. I recognized the fact that we needed people who worked on legislation that had real life experience. And so hopefully that's what I've been able to bring to the table. Served in the legislature for 4 years, was the assistant majority leader in the House for 2, and then ran and now represents South Dakota. Rick and I call ourselves kind of the Dakota delegation. We don't have a lot of other partners when it comes to looking for state members in the House, so we talk a lot. And you have got a real advocate for agriculture in the House. I don't know what I'd do without Rick. As soon as I hit the floor, he's asking what's going on in the Ag Committee, what can we do, giving me input and information from North Dakota and how it's being impacted by policies. And that was very important when we worked the House Farm Bill through the committee and did our markup. Back in April, Rick was helping me identify several flaws in the current farm bill that we're operating under. Obviously, it worked well. It was a good farm bill, but there were some things that we needed to address in the committee as well. One of those was the fact that our livestock disaster programs were expired. The last farm bill was put into place for 5 years, but the livestock disaster programs expired and don't cover 2012. And then we have this drought hit as well. Back in April, I introduced legislation that reauthorized those programs for this year, but then also we made sure that they got included into this bill as well. Recognizing the livestock guys just don't have the opportunity to purchase crop insurance like commodity guys do. And so it's helping us brainstorm and talk about things like that that's critically important when it comes to working together on legislation. I serve on natural resources, ag, and education and workforce. And so we've got a lot of moving parts out there. It's been good to have a seat at the leadership table and educate them about the value that agriculture brings. We have, throughout this recession that we've faced, what has held us steady in this country has been a strong ag economy. In South Dakota, it's our #1 industry, and we worked very hard to tell that story in Washington. Every senator has some kind of ag in his district. Has some kind of ag that impacts him. But when you get to the House, it's a different picture. There's many representatives that don't have any kind of agriculture in their district. They live in urban areas, so there's people who just don't understand it at all. And that's why you've got to have people there that are vocal and will tell the story like Rick does. You have to educate them on the value of a strong ag economy and why we need policy that puts that safety net out there in such a risky industry. So it's been good to have that. We've got a big job in front of us. We're hoping to get the conference committee here before this one expires and get a bill put into place. And I know that that's Rick's goal as we sit here today with all of you and identify our priorities. When we get to that, obviously the Senate bill looks different than the House bill that we put together. Neither of them are perfect. And that's why we recognize we need a vehicle to get to conference so we can put together a farm bill that works for our producers. I don't think anybody in this room is interested in putting together a bill that works for anybody's special interest. We want to do something that really does provide that safety net and make sure that we have 5 more years of a strong ag economy to continue to feed this country and this world. When I talk about agriculture, it's the fact that it's a national security issue for me. It's a food bill, and we have the responsibility to feed the world, and that's why we make sure that we have good policy. So, with that, I know that...
Like as Kristi says, our challenge is when you have 30, 40, and 50 congressmen and women from like New York City and New York State and California, it gets to be a challenge. Those two states team up against our 2 states, and we have to talk really long and hard. But the key is, I always like to argue with people over lunch or breakfast or something like that when they actually have food in their mouth and they can appreciate how important agriculture is. Why don't we do this? Why don't we just go around quickly and introduce everyone once, and then, Kristi, I'd like you to introduce your staff here too.
Well, I have Beth with me today. Beth Hollitz is from Clark, South Dakota. I don't know if any of you know where Clark is, but it's just west of Watertown. It's probably 30 miles. And Beth has just been running a restaurant and small businesses in South Dakota, and that's the kind of people I like to fill my office with, people who really know how regulations and taxes and policies affect normal everyday people. And she's just kind of a hard worker. When you run your own business, you learn to work 22 out of 24 hours a day, and she does that. So that's all I've got.
And then I'd like to use Tom Nelson, who's our state director. And then we have a new hire that's trying to get up to speed on ag issues, Bob Peterson. Kind of go easy on Bob as he gets up to speed here. And then also I see there's someone from Senator Hoban's staff. Do you want to just introduce?
Justin Forty with Senator Hoban's staff here in Fargo.
Nathan Todd, Senator Hoban's staff also.
And then another NDSU Ag grad with my term, Scott Stockton from Senator Conrad's staff. For that, Tom, you want to just start, and we'll just would like you to just introduce everyone quick so we know who's here, and then we'll go back around and talk more specifics.
Tom Moja, the executive director of Corn Growers, and our office is located in
Dan Watson, the executive director of North Dakota Grain Growers Association. Our office is in Maine.
Hi, I'm the director of the North Dakota Farmers Union. Pam Lesson, staff member of the North Dakota Farmers Union, and we're based in Maine.
Kevin Spooks, I'm a farmer from Arthur, about 30 miles northwest. I'm chairman of the North Dakota Corn Council and newly elected to the National Corn Board of Directors.
Brad Dickinson, president of North Dakota Grain Growers and Farm Northwest, 65 miles.
Chuck Gunnarsson with the Northern Plains Potato Growers Association. I'm the executive director. We have our office in East Grand Forks, Minnesota, and we represent potato producers in both Minnesota and North Dakota.
Paul Matheson, I farm up at Grand Forks. I'm Federal Valley Sugar Beet Growers, North Dakota liaison, whatever that means.
Paul Rutherford, I'm president of the Red River Valley Sugar Beet Growers Association. I farm on the other side of the river. I'm east of Grand Forks, about 12 miles. Nick Sinner apologizes for not being here, but he's in Coeur d'Alene, Idaho, and kind of wish I was there with him. But thank you. Thank you for coming.
Andy Swenson, the NDSU Extension Farm Management Specialist.
Grady Dorsgard from Northwood. I represent the North Harvest Dry Bean Growers.
Dina Weezy with the U.S. Dairy Growers Association, and our office is in Denmark.
Chris Vogel, NDSU Extension Service, the new director.
Steve Everson, North Dakota Barley Council here in Fargo.
Good morning, I'm Dan Robick. I represent the North Dakota Stockmen's Association, New Ranch, but maximum 125 miles northwest.
This fall, I represent the North Dakota Association of Soil Conservation District. I farm here, or I did farm the boys farm now west of here about 40 miles.
Jeff Bissling, Executive VP, North Dakota Farm Bureau. We have offices here in Fargo and Pittsburgh.
Doug Goring, North Dakota Agriculture Commission. So grateful and thankful that you're here. Congresswoman.
Yeah, you can just call me
I guess,
Kristi.
yeah,
It's
Kristi.
easier.
Thank you for being Kristi, and thank you, Congressman Berg, for hosting this event. It's a nice opportunity to get around and talk about some issues.
Well, let me just start with the process. And obviously, we have a lot of experience in how things are done right in the legislative process in North Dakota and South Dakota. And I couldn't be more frustrated with the wall that we've hit right now in the House. And we can get into that a little bit, but just kind of to bring everyone up to speed, of course, the Farm Bill Senate version was passed, and that's sitting there. The House version of the Farm Bill came out of Ag Committee, very bipartisan, Republicans, Democrats, strong support. I know many of you around the table, we had a lot of dialogue getting to that point. That came out of the House Committee, and then typically we have strong bipartisan support on a Farm Bill in the House. And our push has been to get that bill to the floor of the House. when it's voted on and passed, then it would go into a conference committee with the Senate Farm Bill. And then out of that would come a hybrid, I'm assuming of some sort. It would come back to the floor of the House, come back to the floor of the Senate, and be voted on. And our goal is to have a 5-year farm bill by the expiration date of September 30th of 2012. And so that's really our focus. As we talked briefly, you know, there's been a number of things that we've done to push leadership to work with our peers in the House, both Republicans and Democrats. The challenge that we've heard back from leadership is we don't have the votes to pass the bill. We don't want to bring the bill to the floor if it's not going to pass. And so part of what our objective is right now is to continue to work with not only leadership, but some of those people in our caucus and also the Democratic caucus that maybe aren't supportive of the Farm Bill. And so, you know, I'll just kind of turn that over to Kristi a little bit, and let's open it up for questions on the process, and then we can go to the next step if you'd like.
Yeah, it's been interesting. As the committee brought the bill forward, we knew at that point in time that we had a chance to get it to the floor and get it into conference committee if we could show that we had the votes on the floor. We need 218 votes. And if you look back at over the last 4 or 5 farm bills, they've always had been strong bipartisan votes. Both Republicans and Democrats usually come to the table and help carry them and get them forward. As to move them out of the House and get them to that conference committee and make sure we've got something to work with. The problem is if we don't put a vehicle through, we can't send the Farm Bill to conference, and we can't come forward with the final product. So my job as a liaison to the leadership team is the 89 Republican freshmen elected me to go there and to be their advocate. And so I've been in many, many conversations with leadership, with Speaker Boehner and Leader Cantor, and worked very closely with Chairman Lucas to make sure that they knew what our concerns were. We've got Republicans that are not supportive of a farm bill, but some Republicans never have been. They just believe there isn't a role for the federal government. What's different about this time is that because of some of the reforms that we've got in the bill, is that we don't have very large Democrat support either. And that's where we're getting a hang-up on getting the votes that we need to get at the conference committee. So we've been working on trying to make sure that we get both parties to the table again, that we answer questions the Republicans have, the Democrats have, that we get everybody there to get the votes and move it forward. Right before I left town, the conversation that I had with Leader Cantor was, you know, if we get the 218 maybe, get it to the floor again. He's getting tired of me asking that question, but I ask him that about every 12 hours to 24 hours because I want to make sure that once we get that momentum built here during this August work period, that we can get it there. And then for us, I honestly believe we'll get there, that we're going to get that support and get it into conference committee. If we do, we need to know what our priorities are. Obviously, the Senate bill was a little different than what the House put out, and we want to have something that works for the ag community to get it there. So, you know, what I hear all the time is the importance of crop insurance. And I'd like to have some of you speak to the crop insurance portion of the bill. Obviously, that was identified as a priority in both the Senate version and the House version, although the Senate did go about that a little bit differently too. So as we work through committee, obviously there's regional differences that you have. You have the southern growers that the direct payments work a little bit better for them than they do all of us up here in the north. And so there was some different things talked about and done in committee as well. We need to know when we get to conference what works for us so that we can go there and advocate for it and get it done.
Any questions that people have really on the process and what we're going through right now? As Kristi said, you know, both of us have been, you know, Frank Lucas, who was here in North Dakota, met with many of you in January. He's been a strong advocate of pushing this forward. You know, certainly Boehner and Cantor and Kevin McCarthy who's been here. There was an article in Politico today, kind of one of the Washington, D.C. daily newspapers that said he anticipates we'll have this done by the end of September. And so this is anyone that's been involved in the legislature knows this is a moving process, and our goal, quite frankly, is 1st of September that we can get this moving to conference and have something coming out of conference very quickly. And so it may just be in the conference committee for about a week or maybe 2 weeks, and so we'll have to. So any questions people would have about the process? Sure, Dan.
Yeah, Rick, thank you. Thank you, Representative Noem, for coming today. Appreciate the opportunity to visit. One of the things that both of you have been involved in is a discharge position or a discharge petition to leadership. What happens if that, even though you get it to the floor, one of the problems on the floor has been, from what I understand, the lack of votes. What happens if the discharge petition is successful, but the bill is not?
Let me just jump on that. One of the tools is kind of one the leadership doesn't like at all. It's called a discharge petition. If you have 218 people out of the 435 in the House of Representatives sign this, then the bill has to automatically come to the floor of the House and be voted on. You know, it's kind of like in North Dakota, if the bill's in committee 20 days and the committee doesn't do anything with it, automatically comes to the floor. And so, I mean, that's what I have been pushing kind of in the background. My hope is that if we have signatures on that, leadership will recognize we have to move forward on this, and it will never actually require a discharge petition to go forward and get to the point where they say, okay, we're going to take it up. And I mean, I guess from my perspective, I mean, this is a legislative process. You bring the bill to the floor, it doesn't pass, you go back to committee, you adjust the bill so you can get it passed, and then you take it up again. And so I mean, I understand all these things, but until we get our system to be more transparent, it's hard for everyone to say, you know, who's for it, who's against it, why. And so I think that's part of by moving this forward, we'll understand that.
Yeah, I agree with Rick. You know, it takes 30 days for this discharge petition to be filed before it can actually come forward. And when the process like it operates in Washington, D.C. breaks down like that, sometimes you have to go to mechanisms like that. So you never know, by the time that petition comes forward, by the middle of September, you know, we may have some agreement to be able to move the bill and it won't be necessary. But it could be necessary, and that's an option we have to leave on the table.
Other questions in the process? Sure.
So where does the desire or not to bring this bill forward, what's the hold up? Is it because there isn't enough bipartisan support, or why isn't this bill just already been brought forward?
Well, traditionally, people don't like to see their legislation be brought forward and fail. You know, when you build that kind of a storyline on legislation that's as important as a farm bill, it doesn't set a good precedent for success into the future. And so we are very cautious in the fact that if you brought a farm bill to the House floor and it failed, that would be detrimental to our end game of getting something actually accomplished. So that's why we've tried to have a balanced approach about this. Although the process is so broken right now, I think all of us want to see a vote. Because I honestly believe that when it came down to it, that we'd have more votes than what the leadership team thinks that we have. And I've told them that I want to see it brought no matter what, whether they think they've got the votes or not. Give us the chance to whip the bill and to educate members and do all of that. As long as they hold off on the vote, we don't really have the option to do that. We've tried to encourage it. The almost 80 members that we had on that letter that I circulated to get them on, the leadership was blown away by that amount of people that actually would say bring the farm bill to the floor. Before we left town, we did the same thing again, circulated another letter that said go home, hear from people, but come back ready to do a farm bill. And Rick has been listening for ready to do that. And then we'll start to but the leadership does not like we've had those conversations. They don't like the fact that they can't say it would be successful. They recognize the fact that we've always done the farm bill, that there's been extensions in the past. Speaker Boehner's been playing speakers. He told me what will pass, and we'll try to put together. That's why there was discussion on a year-long extension, so that we could work towards getting a 5-year bill. And so really, it is that we've got to have members coming back and hearing from all of us about what we've provided to this country as far as stability, what ag policy does. That's really what will bring us back to story.
Yeah, I mean, it's as simple as you said, Kristi. I mean, leadership doesn't want their bill to fail on the floor. And, you know, whether it's Republican or Democrat, House or Senate, that's kind of, and when there really wasn't the bipartisan nature on the floor that they thought because of some of the nutritional changes, reforms, you know, that's kind of where this kind of stopped a little bit. But from my perspective, this has to move forward. I mean, this is what really frustrates me. I mean, I've had a lot of bills on the floor as a leader, and until you get a bill on the floor and people vote on it up or down, you really don't know where you're at. Because people say a lot of different things that they won't say when it's on the floor, especially people from that background. So I just couldn't feel more strong about this needs to get to the floor, and it needs to pass on a bipartisan basis, because that's really the one thing that I've seen over the last year and a half is agriculture has been bipartisan, House and Senate, you know, Republican and Democrats. So I think again, from our organizational standpoint, from everyone here, I think hopefully this message will continue to spread across this country, especially with the drought we're facing, and the fact that we've got a great industry here, and we need to create some certainty in agriculture, not uncertainty, by not having a long-term farm bill. So, it's a process. Other questions on it? Sure.
Why in the House has the extension been brought up, and what is that advantage over getting the farm bill done?
Well, I'll just say, one of the things that I was pushing for about 2 weeks ago was, if they're worried about the farm bill passing, then how do we get it into conference committee? And so our goal was to say, let's do something that everyone will agree with, an extension, but only if it goes right into conference committee. So it would go right into conference committee, and then in September when we came back out, we'd have a report out of conference committee. We couldn't get commitment on leadership to move that right into conference committee. So as a result, there wasn't the support to do that. But if you look at the highway bill, that was a bill that, I think we had some success in washing over. The House passed an extension of the highway bill. That extension went into conference committee, and then they worked out the differences in conference committee. So it wasn't, I'm not for doing a 1-year extension. I'm for a 5-year bill that we get done by the end of September. But we got to get it into conference committee, so that was just one idea. We just will get us in conference committee.
No, that was perfect.
Doug?
Well, thank you again for this opportunity. I probably don't have a question as much as I have some comments and some thoughts to share. Long before the national scene had an opportunity to really start debating, and this is with respect to all of our national organizations, our ag community here got together and started outlining some of their priorities. And I thought it was pretty important I mentioned those. You talked about crop insurance. One of the priorities, the first thing they put on the plate was crop insurance and risk management tools. They also went as far as to say that livestock indemnity program, livestock forage program, and ELAP and EQIP certainly needed to be priorities also. And then they also put on the table research and trade. And a lot of what we saw, and when I say trade, with respect to MAP and FMD funding. But with respect to all that, they saw a lot of that get built into, at least for the most part, 2 of the bills that are now being debated, or at least being brought forward, the Senate version and the House version. And they both seem to have some similarities and seem to get us where sort of we want to go. And I'm happy to hear you talk about the fact that we need to do something with the 5-year bill, because it is vitally important. An extension is somewhat ambiguous. Where are we going to be later? We have 2 problems here as we face next year. We all know that we're going to be suffering higher input costs, and that's devastating for our livestock producers and for our grain producers. But also the fact that we need to do some planning, and if we don't have some certainty, that puts us in a very bad position. The other thing is FSA needs time to implement, and for them to really grasp everything that's in there and as things get worked out, USDA has to walk through that process, and we could already be in the field by the time there's a really good understanding of what is there. An extension just puts us in limbo.
Doug, can I ask you a question on that? Because that's one of the conversations that we've had, that Chairman Lucas and I have had a lot, is doing it a year-long extension. Using it as a vehicle to get the farm bill done, but that year-long extension also, and maybe Ellen could speak to this too with her experience on the state committee, but it takes a while to get all of our FSA staff up to the level that they need on brand new programs. So even though we would have the farm bill extended for that year, using that as a vehicle to get a 5-year one done, but is there some value to having that year to getting USDA up to speed and implementing the policy? Because there is some fundamental changes in these programs that have come through the Senate bill and the House bill.
If it gives people a reason, though, not to vote for a 5-year plan or to dramatically change what it can look like, that just puts us in a bad position. If we either do it or you don't, because I think that's one of the greatest problems, is it just gives maybe Congress a gives them a reason to say we're not gonna move forward and do it. That's a big fear. I think the other thing is putting some money towards, and I know this isn't an issue that we always think of as producers, but I'll tell you, as a regulator and somebody who works with the SDA quite often, put some money into the computers. Give them some money for that. Because I tell you, they're antiquated, it's problematic programs, they do the best they can, but it is an issue that we as farmers and ranchers are affected by on a daily basis.
Well, that's great. I mean, crop insurance is a center part of this. I mean, that's the one thing everyone understands. Kristi mentioned to Ellen, you've been appointed to a national board. Maybe you want to share that a little bit, your work on crop insurance and, what you see as important decisions as it relates to crop insurance, here in the next 2 months.
Well, all I know is and I'll just speak from my personal experience as a farmer, is we need to have a strong crop insurance program. I can speak to that just from the experience we had last year when we had a third of our crop land that we couldn't plant. If we hadn't had that prevent plant in place, and if we didn't have a affordable crop insurance program, we probably wouldn't have farmed this year. I mean, that is so important. But right along with that, and Kristi talked about the FSA office, we need to have this permanent farm program in place, this 5-year bill, not a 1-year extension, because not only do our FSA office need to have that certainty going forward and know what the programs are, but so do farmers. I need to know what's going to be there. That the uncertainty just does not work. And Doug talked about our increasing input costs. I think over the last 10 years, I can't, if you'd have told me 10 years we would be paying for inputs what we're paying for right now, I would have said, that's not possible. I mean, that's how quickly things are changing in agriculture. And there are so many opportunities, so this really isn't important. And we've always had, as you've noted, all of you, bipartisan support for farm bills. I mean, I think 5 years ago when this current one passed, they had to overcome 2 presidential vetoes to pass it. There was extremely strong support in Congress for the farm bill. And I think there can be this time, but we need to figure out the mechanism to do that.
Yeah. So far, the work in committee and the work on the letters has all been bipartisan. I mean, we've worked with the letter I circulated with Representative Welch from Vermont, getting a farm bill to the floor. The amendments that we brought to the committee were all bipartisan, that we brought, the vote was 35 to 11. So we're hoping to continue to just build that and build up the numbers on both sides.
And I think the changes in the nutrition part of it, which would be food stamps, et cetera, were bipartisan as well. I mean, there's those reforms, and so we just need to keep that momentum going. I think the last farm bill, I think they did have a 1-year extension on the last farm bill, and they did a farm bill. And, from my perspective, this is the one bright spot in our economy. If we can't get a 5-year term, it creates this uncertainty from banks that are providing the operating loans. You hit the nail on the head, these costs are going way up. And, I mean, equipment and land and the inputs that are key to your operation, people are just gonna not purchase things. They're gonna delay until they can see a long-term farm program. So I worry about our ag industry losing its momentum if we don't have the certainty. But
could I make one more point?
Absolutely.
Right along with that crop insurance program, we need to have that permanent disaster program in place. We cannot be held hostage to the political whims of Congress.
Are you talking about the livestock disaster? Or are you talking about the
livestock disaster, insure program? Yes, exactly. I mean, my banker wants to be paid in a year, but if I'm held hostage to an ad hoc disaster program, that might come a year down the road, 2 years down the road. That just doesn't work in this day's economy.
Yeah, I agree. Sometimes from different organizations, I get mixed feedback on the SURE program, especially in light of how the Senate bill was put together with more of the shallow loss coverage, replacing the SURE program and the AGR program and some of that. So when we're working out the disaster programs and getting them passed before we change as well, that was part of that conversation.
Why don't we just, I know a lot of people came a long ways here. Why don't we, Tom, do you want to just start and just, if there's anything, the focus really would like, what would you like to see in the farm bill? You know what the Senate version is, you know what the House version came out, and you kind of see
Are there any particular things that we should be aware of as we go through this?
I will defer to the chairman of the board other than to say, 5 years of clarity is much better than 1 year of uncertainty. And from the National Corn Growers perspective, we do like the Senate version. We feel it's a more market-based approach. And we do think there's some very good things in there. At the Commissioners' Roundtable last August, everybody was going around the room, and it became evidently clear that, hey, we need some better coverage for new producers. And I know that came from Farm Bureau. That was one of their suggestions. And there's a lot of good things in that Senate version, namely better coverage, better insurance for new and beginning farmers. I'll leave it at that.
You want to go from that? We'll do it by commodity here.
So you kind of dumped it on me. So,
yeah.
Rick and Kristi, thank you very much for coming here. This farm bill is so desperately important to the Agriculture Committee. We as a nation don't know what it is to be hungry, and we don't ever want to know that. So we need to keep our safe, abundant, and affordable form of food. So a couple things on the farm bill. Like Tom said, North Dakota and National Corn Growers actually like the Senate bill better. There's a few things, but it's just so important to get to conference committee because we can work some of these things out. You know, one thing that Brad will talk about later, but it's the conservation compliance. You know, the Senate bill really needs to be changed. I guess. Oh, I lost my train of thought now.
Well, you get the big ones.
Yeah, I'll go to Brad.
Well, I'll expound on what Kevin is, and I think using conservation compliance in a crop insurance will take and erode this crop insurance program down to where people will walk away from it, without having to have these rules. We've struggled with the more jurisdiction we give a government agency like the IRS or anything like that, the more farmer unfriendly they get to be. And we struggle with that when we've had these wet conditions in North Dakota where we want to do this water management and running into these roadblocks constantly. And I think that's one thing that we need to change out of the Senate, bill or whatever. On the flip side, on the House, as far as the grain growers and as the National Wheat Association, very concerned about Lucas's push for the target prices. I think that when we start using policy to set prices on a national level, instead of using economics and using the supply and demand, I think we're going to run into a case where people start farming the program. And I have big resistance to the people in the South that don't take crop insurance and have to get money from the direct payments. I mean, we as U.S. citizens have to take in and do our share and realize that it's not a right to raise the crop and that the taxpayer wants to pay that enrollment or whatever. We need some type of fallback like the Senate version where we get into a shallow loss type of thing to have supplement during tough times. But writing policy for the sake of farming gets to be a tough thing, and using that countercyclical payment gets to be market distorting. And I strongly like to see that changed out of Congress.
Well, I agree with you. That was a big part of our conversation with the chairman when he was putting his chairman's mark together. I did not support tying conservation to the commodity title at all. Thought it was a bad precedent to set.
Right.
So I think that when we get to committee or to conference, I'm hoping that the Senate version can be fixed, and that we can fix that part of it. And as far as those direct payments in the southern growers, obviously our chairman's from that area of the country as well, and so we had a lot of conversations about target prices as well. He says that they just don't have a crop insurance mechanism for cotton and peanuts and rice, and that they don't have the same kind of coverage opportunities to manage their risk that we have up here. For me, rather than to back into target prices and do a policy that way, we should have found a fix that worked for them within the crop insurance program. And the chairman knows I feel that way. So that's where I'm hoping. Obviously, the bill as it comes to committee is perfect, and I didn't love all parts of the bill. And it won't be perfect when it comes to the floor either. But but I do believe that we have a lot of momentum for Senate provisions in the bill, and a conference bill would be a better bill.
And as we speak, we have, how many, 13 or 15 cotton and rice farmers in the state of North Dakota, so this will be good conversation to have when they're trying to find out where they are in the.
One of the interesting things from a production standpoint, I mean, rice is not as concerned by crop insurance because their crop happens every year. I mean, they flood it, and so they're not worried about lack of moisture, these kind of things. Their sole concern has to do with pricing. And so, I mean, it's different. I've never thought of a crop that you don't worry about rain or those kind of things.
So is the corn producer in Iowa too, that's not concerned about crop, but he is this year.
Yeah, well, let's go back, Dan, do you want to talk anything from the
Well, just to say thank you to you and to Representative Noem for all your hard work and efforts on behalf of North Dakota South Dakota Farm. We appreciate that a lot. And taking your time today to visit. Our president, Brad Dickinson from North Dakota Grain Growers, who also serves as the domestic policy chairman for the National Association of Growers, is outlining very, very graphical what our concerns are and where we're at. One thing on the, just as an aside, crop insurance for rice. We're working on that, actually, not specifically for rice. We don't have a lot of that, as the commissioner could say. But a product that we're working on, crop insurance, that we've got to the SCIC level, is called margin protection. And that's going to hit spring wheat producers. It will hit corn. It will be used for soybeans, but it will be used in rice. So it's under development, actually, at the SCIC level. So thank you.
Anything else you'd like to?
Just what Ellen said, you know, your program, I'm personally about the disaster provision that has to be able to do better about the
Yes, I'd like to also echo everyone's opinions here. Thank you very much for taking time, both of you, to come out here to Fargo and visit the Farm Bill. Potato industry, as all of agriculture, crop insurance is a key. It's very, very important to our industry. Another thing that comes to mind is the specialty crops provision of the Farm Bill. Senator Stabenow did an excellent job of putting a specialty crops portion in the Farm Bill, and I believe it's exactly similar in the House bill. Marketing, research, trade issues for the specialty crop provisions is very important to our industry because potatoes are a specialty crop. We probably have a tendency to favor what's in the Senate bill. We think that the Senate bill came out and almost all of agriculture jumped on it and said, hey, this is great, let's move forward with this. Well, as we went into the House, things changed a little bit. So our industry probably does support the Senate side of the Farm Bill. You guys work hard at this, you know, and we really, really appreciate the amount of time that you put into bringing agriculture to the forefront to make it better for all of us. And you know, thanks. I really do appreciate that.
Paul? Well, from Sugar's perspective, thank you, both of you again, for taking your time. We like the House bill better because there's no changes. The Senate bill's just got a minor tweak on the TRQ date of back to February 1st. We can live with that. But 85% of sugar production happens between October and April 1, and that's when the sugar is the most available in this country. And so that's why the April 1st date, by then, the northern states are wrapping up their beet slice production. We have an idea where our sugar supplies are. It gives us a little better idea of what we're going to have to bring in. As you know, we're the #1 importer, so we know we bring it in. It's just a matter of how much, and if we could keep that date back at April 1st, it just kind of clarifies production up in this part of the world. My frustration is the House leadership had a chance to go to that extension, get something to conference committee, conference out a 5-year bill and bring it back to the floor. And they didn't do it. I had a conversation with Speaker Boehner July 11th, and he said we need 218 votes. Well, the next morning I was at a fundraiser and I was told that Majority Leader Cantor said, yeah, but those votes gotta be on the Republican side. So, to me, the leadership is creating a little bit of this partisanship, and it's frustrating as a producer out here because, as earlier said, crop insurance is a major thing, but you know, sugar producers, we grow corn, we grow soybeans, we grow dry beans, we grow wheat, we grow barley, and we need some certainty out here, and right now, there's nothing going on, and we gotta keep push on, but when I spoke with Boehner that night, I was frustrated. It just doesn't, they don't wanna go there.
You're looking at the mirror here. Absolutely, we need to.
And we talked about that, Rick, that night, you know, and.
Part of this is to hear from you, so we can go directly back to them and say, here's what's happening. I mean, they wanted to adjourn for the month, and we voted against adjournment, so they can call us back anytime to take this up. And well, that's why we're doing this, our first day back right now, so we can go back this week and keep this pressure on. And I mean, I totally agree with your frustration, but.
And September's gonna be a short month, and then you're gone again.
Well, this will have to be decided by the end of September. That's when it expires.
And if we go past September 30th, I think we're gonna see more cuts in these programs than any of us are gonna want to see. We need to step up.
Skip over the other call. Do you have any? He's my boss.
Okay.
Thank you, though.
Absolutely. Thank you.
I will tell you though that Leader Cantor, his statement is true. He's told me that before. He thinks that we have to get 218 Republicans because the Democrats haven't been able to guarantee any votes, which that's new territory for us. I tell him that I believe when that bill comes to the floor, we'll have Democrat votes. And so there's a little bit of faith in doing a farm bill. We have faith every year when we borrow money to put a crop in the dirt and hope that fall there's something there to pick up. So maybe he just hasn't had to live by faith before.
Yeah, I have a couple of points. One in regards to this overall safety net that we're relying a lot on crop insurance. Of course, the dominant crop insurance is revenue insurance, and we've had these costs basically double in a few years. And the danger is we've got this high cost structure, and if our prices ever drop, so our revenue coverage declines also, we could be in a real risk position because there'd be a loss there. And that's why I think it's important as a component to update these loan rates, or else the countercyclical payment target prices. I know the House does have a component that modifies the countercyclical program, which addresses that, because our current price, bottom safety net, the loan rates are, abysmal right now. They just don't do it. The other point I'd like to make is in regards to the shallow loss program. And right now, both the House and the Senate have a program that's crop by crop, and I think that's a mistake. Really, there's an opportunity to, increase revenue on a farm, and it's crop to crop, because they could have good yields on one crop, another crop they have a loss, they get a government payment, where it's really not necessary. That's why it should be on a whole farm base. So that's why I thought the SURE program was really so good. It kind of confuses me why there's this negative vibes about the SURE program. I read an article where Mike Johans, Senator from Nebraska, commented on SURE. He said, "I just don't like it." Well, what kind of reason is that? Why? And I don't know if there's some misunderstanding about the program, but that seems like to me that'd be a lot more fair way of doing it, where you have a whole farm. That's where you're concerned about your finances, how you can make it on the whole farm, the crop by crop. There's some problems there, I think. Yeah, and that's my comments.
Thank you very much.
Thank you for being here, but no comments.
Thanks you guys for being here today. Appreciate all the hard work that you're doing. From the Durham producers, just reiterating probably mostly what's been said, just the urgency in getting out of the House to conference committee, affordable disaster assistance and affordable or permanent disaster assistance and affordable crop insurance are their two priorities. And then also to Brad's point about making sure commodities are kind of on a fair playing field, not pinning kind of one against the others. So that's the urgency.
Well, gonna leave it to the experts in terms of the details, but I just like the big picture approach. Agriculture is food, and that you're taking that approach and what it means to the country, so get it done.
Couple of comments and probably a couple of questions too. I think first off, on the crop insurance front, we've got a risk environment that's changing so rapidly for those producers out there that I think some of the new products, like the spring wheat product for our margin coverage, is going to be coming forward. And just looking ahead, let's make sure that we're keeping that program strong from a development standpoint as well, because a lot of the old APH yield products and some of the revenue products, they have their place. They've served their place very well. They'll still have a place, but as the risk environment changes, there's going to be new products, and that we have a little bit of a biased love for the 508H development program within crop insurance. It's very, very good for producers because they get a voice in helping with the development process of it. I've been building insurance products for 25 years on both through the public and private sector side, and our friends at RMA do a pretty darn good job with administrating insurance, but building it's a different story. You got to make sure that the growers have got that voice in. So, and don't tie it to conservation compliance. That's a horribly bad idea from an actuarial standpoint. That doesn't make any sense. But question though, because there seems to be kind of a disconnect in how the leadership is viewing this. Has leadership even agreed that they would allow conferencing in-house? They had those discussions, or?
I don't know if I've gotten that specific with them. I mean, I've had the conversations that we've got to get to conferences, both Boehner and Cantor, and they both nodded and said, yeah, we recognize that, or otherwise we're not going to get them done. But
I think the last push was to, if we do a one-year extension, to go straight to conference, and they would not do that. So, I mean, again, this legislative process is one where the cards are reshuffled kind of every day, and so, I mean, if nothing happens, then you have a very short period of time where everything's going to happen, and so that's why it's critical that we stay on top of these issues.
But I would tell you that way, if we could have gotten that one, I had the conversation with leadership though, that if we got that system off the house, that obviously then we have a vehicle there, and that puts the ball in the Senate's court again, to where we could request, then they would request the conference committee. So I believe it would get us there. It's their request to make of us once we get a vehicle through, I believe. So we had that conversation. The problem is when it got time to whip the vote to see if we had the vote on a one-year extension, there was enough frustrated members on the floor that wanted a 5-year bill. I mean, even people that weren't ag people recognized, why aren't we just bringing the farm bill down here? That we're whipping no on the extension, and we're saying that they wouldn't support it. So
that's why it's hard to actually have a bill on the floor that people can look at and say for or against it to get a read.
It's taking herding cats to a whole new level.
Oh yeah.
This is, I will tell you, this is not at all how we do business in South Dakota or in North Dakota. This for people that have served in the legislatures and their short time frame to do your work and put a budget out to do. I say all the time that in South Dakota we have a 40-day session. I know you guys meet every 2 years, so that's even better. But you have an idea, you put a bill forward. Well, I had somebody tell me when I first got elected, they said, Kristi, every day that you're in session, our way of life is in jeopardy. And you know what? I wholeheartedly agree with that on some things. But the process at times is very broken out there, and it's very frustrating for people who are used to seeing something that needs to get done.
The fundamental problem out there is people don't make a decision. And even if, we've talked about this, there's things we'd like to tweak, but at the end of the day, we've got to make a decision in a timely manner. Otherwise, it throws the whole industry into this uncertainty. And so, I mean, that's the one thing that I think is so critical. We've got to make decisions. Dan?
Yeah, I don't want to keep sitting on the dead horse here, but yeah, we do need the certainty of a 5-year farm bill. So I want you to continue to push that way. I do want to thank you and your office for, you guys spent a lot of time recently working on this emergency disaster bill. Christi's office spent a lot of time on that too. I know our office and you guys spent an awful lot of time on that, so I do thank you for that. And I also believe you got basically it's a position letter of Florida Soccer Association addressing many of these items on a bigger picture type deal. Another one of those items is the conservation. We certainly want the conservation items to continue to be voluntary. But we would certainly appreciate the continued funding of the WIP program. I think the consumers get a good bang for their buck, both on the financial benefits of it and the environmental benefits from it. Another item to continue supporting is the facility like this, the research. I think long term, some of these things are short term. The emergency bill is kind of a short term deal. It's going to rain next spring, it'll be all right. Continuing the support of the research like we see in this facility or on the other side of the campus where there's additional livestock research being done. We're hoping for continued support on that. In addition to that, the research, we would like to see continued science-based decisions made on grassland management. It probably doesn't affect many of the players at this table, whether you're on the other end of the state, you're dealing with federal lands. We'd like to continue to see science-based decisions and decisions that are probably science that's been developed locally. This little item isn't going to be something we're going to work on or decide in the next 45 days, or even going forward in the next batch of years. We've talked about grassland, the Forest Service land, going back to the NRCS level. I mean, that's not a 45-day deal you got here.
Sure, Kristi feels the same way, but we get frustrated having the Forest Service managing grasslands.
Yeah.
And I mean, just the frustration of having one-size-fits-all regulations or rules coming out of Washington is what's frustrating. And I've heard from many of the Senate bill linking conservation title to, crop insurance and some of these things have people very uneasy because they can't trust how that's going to be determined and how that's going to roll out. So again, what we're hearing is we need that certainty.
And this science needs to be developed locally.
Find that language and using the science-based information when it puts over the regulations. I think that's
And more specifically, this science needs to be developed locally. I think the science that it's a different ballgame if you're dealing with
maybe at NDSU where we have some research.
Well, yeah, absolutely, and let's take advantage of that. Underlying all this, I think we're all, because of the businesses that we're all in, is, at least I certainly think that the greatest asset this country's got is the ability to produce food and fiber. And whether we use that to our benefit in trading or, your opening statement was the jobs creation is huge. And if it's something that we have the ability to do and we do it well, continue to help that come up. Thank you.
Richard?
Thank you for inviting me. You just said everything I was going to say.
It's tough being at the end of the line, yeah.
No, really, I agree with what he says in the tying of conservation to the insurance. It probably won't work. But conservation is the basis for everything we've talked about here today. It really is. And I farmed for all my life since the service, and my sons are doing it now, and we're trying to work with this agriculture issue. With that said, the technical assistance from conservation is probably the most important part of the program. Being able to get the soil conservation districts working with NRCS and the state whoever is involved to solve these problems is very important, and it does take money, and I hope that isn't, I know that isn't taken out of the program, but I know there's been a large reduction in the conservation part of it, and a lot of consolidation, which is good. But with that, we'll work with it, but I hope it isn't completely eliminated. I might mention one thing about CRP and soil bank, and we said that you will never go back to a situation like that, and just think back why they were instituted, because there was no value in raising any of those crops. Whatever level we're at, if we're in that situation, that could happen. I hate to see it, I've seen it twice. And with that, there's a lot more to say, and we support all the conservation.
Thank you both for this opportunity to provide some ideas or feedback here. That's a great opportunity for us all. But both versions, the House and the Senate version, have merit, I think, to them, and I think again, I will beat a dead horse here a little bit, but the importance of not tying crop insurance participation to conservation compliance is the one concern, especially on the Senate side, coming out of that side. But the one thing I will add, not to get too far off track here, but realizing that we're coming up on an election here in November, things get dramatized or the posturing gets heightened, and I hope we do not lose sight of the fact that there are some other important things happening as well coming out of the House, specifically in regard to estate tax reform and trade relations with Russia is another one, and also SPCC. Those things impact us on arguably a far greater level, especially the estate tax one. If we went back down to that $1 million exemption and a 55% tax rate, we all know how devastating that would be to our industry, especially given what's happened the last 5 or 6 years in this part of the country with agriculture. So I just hope we don't lose sight of the fact of the things that are really important, and especially from an economic standpoint to our industry right now.
Our committee, Ways and Means, is the tax committee and the trade committee. So those are, we're hoping, just for an update, to get this trade agreement with Russia done in September. They joined the WTO, I think it was August 23rd or something like that, so we're a little bit late, but we've had really good vibe that should come through the House in September. So, yeah, thanks.
I have a final thought. I know you guys need to get going here. I want to thank you both for carrying the water. I have another message to carry back. And it's about sharing with your colleagues. This is all about food and economic security. Over 7 decades ago, federal farm policy was first drafted, and although it's been modified over the years to meet the needs of the present moment, thinking into the future, we provide the public with, as has been said by a few here, affordable, abundant, safe, and some of the most nutritious food in the world. No other country enjoys what we have. And our urban representatives may not see that, but I think they certainly need to understand it. This is to ensure that their constituents have more disposable income to use in other places in the economy. So, and I think the other thing about the other side of this, it's about production. Farmers and ranchers are here to produce, whether it's for a market, but they have a resource. They utilize it responsibly. Crop insurance actually makes sense in the Farm Bill. They have skin in the game. I would say that the U.S. citizen gets a pretty good bang for their buck from a little bit of money that's spent in a federal farm program that provides them with abundant, affordable, and safe food. Thank you.
Well, I know we scheduled for 11. I just want to thank everyone for being here. Kristi, maybe you want to say anything?
No, thank you for coming. I took a page full of notes, so I'll take it back. I appreciate it. The feedback is great. And thank you for sending a helper to work with me that understands agriculture and knows what it's like. People, I think, feel some reassurance that they have people representing them in Washington that know how that's worth a lot when it comes to things like getting a farm bill done. So, appreciate it, and this is good feedback, and it's been my honor to be with all of you. I hope that you'll all continue to funnel me information. You don't have to go through Rick too, but you sure can. So thank you.
I'm tickled pink to have Kristi here, and I just feel so good being around ag people. And, you know, I've said this before, but if we had 535 people from the Midwest here, we could get Congress whipped into shape pretty quick about making decisions. So I am frustrated. This is one of the most frustrating parts. We have to act on things. We have to make decisions, and it's got to be done now. And that's the message that I heard today. That's the message I want to take back to leadership. And again, thanks for reinforcing that. So, thanks, everyone.
And they look at dry land areas. We need to understand, we get an rainfall over the next period of time in order for all of us to take up some standard yields and size. Very nice. Thank you so much for being here. Appreciate it. All right. Good to see you. Occasionally.